podcast, and I am Mimi. I record this podcast about knitting, about sewing, about toy making for children. Well, generally it's like a barking mad podcast about knitting and making and all sorts. I have a zine, which is a handmade magazine all about knitting, projects, poetics, ideas, inspirations, recipes, whatnot, and it comes out around every 3 months, so it's like a quarterly publication that I hand make myself. Currently we've got issue number 5 out, so yes, started in 2018, so last year there were 4 issues. I'm very pleased that I get to record episode 29 of the Yarnchix podcast today. I have a couple of admin things to tell you. So if you're not into our Magic 3 make along or not into the admin chitter chatter, this is the minute you'll have to scroll to get to in with the finished object and that kind of podcasting. I'm so happy. 1st of May saw the kickoff of the Magic 3 Mal, and the Magic 3 Make Along is basically a make along where we have 4 months, so it runs from 1st of May to 1st of September, and we make 3 items: a top, bottoms, and a toy for children or a child. I mean, I have 3 kids, so I tried last year very hard to make 9 items, so 3 sets of 3 things, which was maybe a bit ambitious, but you know, I do always hope and try and get my projects finished. I, however, didn't finish all the projects, so that's also completely fine. The make along is inspiring as is, and we have a chatter thread on the Ravelry page for the Yarnchix podcast, so there's lots of ideas already bouncing about, which makes me very happy. And yeah, we try and help each other out with patterns and questions. Any questions are good questions. And yeah, in the end we take a flat lay, so you pop it on the table, climb on a chair, or just pop it on the floor and take a picture of the 3 items together as a group and post that in the Ravelry thread, and then you can win an overall prize. So there's always one random winner that we just choose from the flat lay, so the overall winner gets a basket of goodies. And if you're a maker and you want to contribute a little present, I would be so very, very happy for you to chip in to this basket of goodness that one very deserving, all the makers are always very deserving, one amazing maker will win at the very end of Magic 3 Mile. I close the thread on the 1st of September, Berlin midnight or something, so that's a long time from now. And then, yeah, we draw a winner. This year I have not made plans. Last year I was very prepared. I'd made like a little drawing for each one of my kids, what I wanted to make. But this year I have decided that I'm making 3 toys for the 3 winning categories. So that every single category, so the tops, the bottoms and the toys, so 3 categories. Each one has a winner overall that some friends and sort of like a little jury will help me decide on these winners, and they will receive presents from me this year. I wanted to make several things, so I'm remaking. Last year I made this incredible chameleon, she's called Rainbow, and my daughter helped me choose all the colors, and I'm remaking it because it was a lot of fun. And yeah, so one of the categories will basically be gifted a chameleon. Oh, I'm really excited to begin this. I've cast on and I've sort of just about started the tail of this chameleon, because it's sort of, you knit from the back forwards and you stuff it whilst you go along, which is quite fun because you see it grow in your hands. And I thought it would be fun to share the growth on the podcast and in my Instagram account, and generally just sort of share the make of this very good stash buster. I'm using hand-dyed yarns, and I will always sort of marl them together with a plant-dyed yarn from my friend Elke, who's Tulpa Yarns. She generously gifted me loads of bits of yarn last year, and I made a cardigan, the Annika cardigan, and I used it for this, but I still have some of her plant-dyed yarns left, so I will marl away. I'm making a Pinglewin in a larger size, and Marie has just put her head on it. She's letting me. So I'm unraveling this cabled sweater, and I have dyed it with indigo, so now it's this sort of minty blue. Yeah, and I'm making a bigger Pinglewin than the one that I've knitted in the past, which is here. So I knitted this from a sock yarn thickness, so it's much smaller than, this will be about twice the size, I reckon, and I'm quite excited to knit the Pinglewin larger. And this time I will also knit the tuxedo. With this Pinglewin I didn't manage, I had like a tuxedo block, I would call it. And so my friend Julie, who's got the podcast Carrot and Coriander, she also made Pinglewin last year, but hers is much bigger, and she made this tuxedo and it didn't fit hers, and she was like, well, but yours is so tiny, I'm sure she will fit into this tuxedo. Knit friends are the best friends. So Julie sent me this tuxedo, and she sent me yarn that she wanted to knit a tuxedo in, which I guess I will use for the tuxedo this time, so it'll make complete sense. So I'm so excited to knit Pinglewin and the tuxedo, so watch this space for the Pinglewin growth. And I will also make a little ragdoll design by Marion, a Berlin doll designer and also teacher and maker. So if you would be local, you would sometimes have the chance to go and join one of her workshops. But if you're not local, she sells her patterns on Etsy, and I will use one of her patterns. So they're the three things. I did show in a recent live show on the 1st of May when we had the launch for the make-along. I also filmed a little live session on Instagram, which I really like doing in connection to Magic 3 Mile. You can find all the information about the make-along via the Yarnchix podcast Instagram account, and I will update there weekly and show you the process of my makes, so hopefully sort of egging you on or inspiring you to join. I would be so happy for lots of people to join. I'm not really planning my makes yet. However, I've started to stash dive sort of gently with myself, because I'm into the idea of using mainly stash, of using stash for the Magic 3, not mainly, but I will use stash for the Magic 3 make-along for my children, and I have to work out what it is I want to make for whom and the sizing, etc. So I'm very excited to do that. Come join us if you're inspired to make for children. And there is also a little subgroup happening, and that is one of my current works in progress. So I'm quite excited that as a sideline we're having a Magic Mama make, because we all thought we should also make something for ourselves. And Fran rightly pointed this out in the Magic Mama thread, which is one of the threads of the Yarnchix podcast, that, why not do that whilst we're making for the little ones, also make something for ourselves. So I'm excited for that little sideline line to the make along. also on my Yarnchix podcast Ravelry group, I had this long-term project which was the Ess-kal, and it was the knit along with a lot of positive ease, which is how I titled it. Now I have finished my second S-shawl. You can see it in the last Yarnchix podcast where I steeped it and tied all the knots through the shawl and finished the shawl. So it was about time I drew a price from the chatter thread, because I drew a price from the same thread when I finished the first S-shawl I was knitting, which is a slightly larger blue version. And you can go and check that out, my Ravelry and wherever if you're nosy. And the price then went to Jenny, who is Salmon Ramones on Instagram, and it was a little pin. And this time I have chosen another little pin by a Scottish artist. I have finished the S-shawl number 2 already in Edinburgh, but this is the next podcast I'm recording, so I wanted to draw another winner from our chatter thread. There's 75 entries of chattering. Let's see. Number 61. That's probably on the last page. 51, yes. 61. Ines! You will get the prize. I'm gonna show you on here quickly. Ines's finished. Isn't that amazing? It's huge! Congratulations, Ines! I will send you a little prize. Congratulations, Ines! Oh god, I'm so chuffed with your massive, lovely, orangey S-shawl. You have won this fly cup. And a fly cup is basically a quick cup of coffee, which I wish I could share with you. I did share a cocktail with you when we were in Edinburgh, and it was lovely to see you meet your mummy and your mama and to just chat. It's always lovely to meet in person, so I'm very pleased that I can send you this little treat, and yeah, so something's coming to you in the mail. So that was the admin I had to do. However, I wanted to conclude this part before I go into the sort of podcasting with a finished object, a couple of whips, and some sewing planning. I wanted to conclude here and just updating you with my progress on the workbook. So I am doing the Me and White Supremacy workbook, and I'm halfway. I paused and I stagnated because it was at a very busy time, but also a very difficult spot of the workbook. But I will not allow myself to let this fizzle out, because Lila Sad has put a lot of work and effort in to making this amazing workbook, which is a reflection of your personal connection to the privilege of being born white, and what this privilege means to you, and how you can dismantle it by learning about your own behavior, your own structures. Obviously this is different to everyone personally. It is different where you grow up or grew up, or where you've moved to, where you live. So I'm very reflective of that, and I'm very much gonna carry on and delving deeper. And this is me on my podcast in order to hold myself accountable, and also to sort of inquire where you are, if you're doing it, if you've downloaded it, if you're ready to read, if you're ready to write, if you're ready to process. And I'm very moved by it, and I'm very hopeful from it. So I think I've learned a lot about myself, and I guess that's where everybody can do their learning. And that is where change begins, is if everybody does their learning on their turf inside, you know, inside these places, but also then outwardly carrying that chain forward. And I see a huge responsibility, especially in my task as a mother, to promote fairness and to promote, you know, anti-colorism, and to promote the awareness of my children towards their privileges. So I hope this is sort of encased and not made anyone feel uncomfortable. I just had to say this on my podcast because it needs saying and reminding that I'm still in the middle of this process, and I'm very intrigued to hear about your progress and processes. I keep you up to date with, you know, what I make, what I am making. Super chuffed to join the Kia Ess-kal with this pair of socks. So my finished object for this podcast, because there is no more than this, is these amazing Kia socks. And Kia socks are a textured sock that's knit top down, which is really good for me. I've worked out that that's the way that I like knitting socks. And Dawn's pattern is really well written. I really like the way she describes also the changeover for the heel flap and gasset. So I used contrast colors, and maybe you can tell, I'm gonna film them a bit closer, gonna film a close-up because they're same but different, because I used different grays when I was in Edinburgh knitting these. I brought the wrong contrast color for the heel, and then I wanted to have a darker toe, so I chose another like color that I had in my bag that I was just stuffed in traveling. But when I was at home, I found the contrast color that I had originally bought, and then finished the toe in this grey. So they're sort of different shades of grey. The main pink yarn is Mending by Rosa Pomar, and Mending yarn is a sock yarn with no synthetic, so no poly, no nylon, and it's really nice. I've knitted my husband a pair for Christmas. You might have seen one of my first pairs of socks was also made from Mending, and these are mega bright. Aren't they just the loudest pink? I must admit, when I was in Edinburgh, I was just knitting this was my travel project, and by the end I was like, why did I choose this bright color? I could have just used the pink as a contrast color, which I will, it is coming up. But anyway, I was much more excited when I knitted the second sock to knit it again. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the sort of sensory overload of the festival, where I was going, oh my god, and this visual is like crazy, what am I doing? Maybe it was that, and that now that I'm sock knitting on a commute, so getting in a couple of rows here, a couple of rows there, it kind of flew by. So no second sock syndrome in this case. Oh, I need to tell you, the top ribbing is actually a plant dyed little mini skein that I got from Ocean by the Sea, who I bought yarn from last summer in July, I think. The Gimme Space socks that I showed in episode 27 as a finished object. And she kindly sent this mini skein along. I still have a little bit left of it. There's a little bit in the Chameleon. That's how I started using it, because the Chameleon was made in the holiday, where I saw her use the dye pot and the magic Gimme Space skein, and I was just like, oh, I love this. And I got home from the holiday and bought the skein from her little Etsy shop, and I was just so happy about that yarn. And then she sent along this amazing mini skein, which was sweet. So it went straight into the Chameleon, because that was what I was working on at the time. Anti-Magic is very soft and fluffy, with these sort of specks of purple and pink and light blues. And then the contrast colors, This light grey and the slightly darker grey is Lang Jawohl. It's like a very good sturdy sock yarn we sell at Volvent where I work. And the toe is a little mini skein that I got already a couple of years ago, and that is Eden Cottage yarn. It was like a little present as part of the Secret Valentine's. Oh god, that was sweet. So I used these colors for the socks, and I'm super happy that I finally finished them. And I made them inspired by a book I'm currently reading to sort of end this finished object part of my podcast with a celebratory little close-up. Object, and now onwards to what's on my needles. I already spoke a bit about the Magic Mama Make Along, and as part of that I have joined another knit along, which is totally 100% utterly supported and welcome to double dip. I'm double dipping knitting the Poet sweater, and as you can tell I've literally just cast on. However, the swatch is so cute. I'm going to show you. So this is my little swatch. I made a little sweater for Ginger Bear, who is our woolen-hearted little teddy bear. Swatching for the Poet, it was so much fun. And so I did this already last year in autumn. And I cast on, so this is how far I got on New Year's Eve as my little New Year's Eve cast on as a special treat. But I never progressed, and now there's a knit along from Zari, who is the designer, Zari Nordlund, and her Poet sweater was published in line issue number 6. I think it's a single pattern by now, so she's published it by Ravelry, and I think she updated the charts as well, so I'm quite excited to get going and carry on, and this will be my sort of little selfish knitting, although all knitting is both giving and taking. Like selfish as in it makes me feel creative and happy, but also I like knitting for my children and others. So anyway, I don't know why I said that, but I'm really excited to make this my Magic Mama sweater, and it is knitted in this sort of sea foamy frothy bluish grey. Is the Merino Dahl by Rosie Greenwool. I'm very happy to have stored this in this bag, safe from anything, and going into my stash and finding this was like, yes, come on Mimi, you wanted to start and join the Poet Cal, so just do it, keep your word. And I keep looking at Ginger and being a bit jealous about her nice lovely sweater, so I guess, you know, it's calling me. So that is one of my works in progress. I'm very happy about that. And I am also currently working on another Mending project. So my dog is lying on it, so I've got to pull it out from under her. I'm going to show you the project bag it lives in first. This is the Kuni bag by Kuni Bertha. a Hamburgian sewing queen and colorwork yoke goddess and dear friend of mine, and I have loved awakening this bag, and I've put lots of different pins on it and the project looks perfect in it. So inside I've got these different skeins of Mending yarn, all sort of stuffed and bits of end, because I also am using this sort of Zauberball and some Jawohl Magic, which is a bit like Zauberball, all bits and bobs to knit my Shifty Sweater. Oh, the bag I bought during Berlin Knits 2017, yeah, and it's been a good treat. Okay, let me pull this out. Marion, danke. Now I'll walk her up. Sorry, Marion. I am knitting the Shifty Sweater, and I'm currently using this really bright yellow. I'm knitting the sleeve. No stitches have been pulled out. Whoa! And oh god, I literally can't wait to finish and wear this. The Shifty Sweater is a design by Andrea Maury, and it is meant to be quite fitted, but I've sort of not swatched and just knitted, so hence it's going to be quite loose. It's still quite short, so I kind of like that, and the sleeve will obviously be a bit longer than the body, so I'm planning to fade in the sleeve now into the blue and into the dark blue and then into a lovely purple. I can't wait. I'm hoping that I'm going to be so inspired after the podcast, because I wanted to show you this in sort of work in progress, because I've been sort of storming ahead with it since coming back from Edinburgh, that I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna just like finish it. Oh, it's gonna be so fast. But it is so much fun that it just sort of flies off the needles. I am using Mending because I had all these different leftovers. So you might recognize the pink from the socks I just showed you. Then I had bits of orange, bits of yellow, and then I had to buy some blue because I felt like blue. And then I got some purple because I wanted purple. The amazing thing is I'm kind of knitting this as a sample for 3 Dagen because I'm going with Ruta, who is the owner of the shop Wollen Berlin, and we will bring along some Mending yarn. So it was a perfect project basically, and so lovely Ruta gave me some yarn support with this sort of speckly and then with the purple, and so it's going to be so good. And I'm not going to wear it before 3 Dagen. I will either wear it there or be on the doll there, and I can't wait. So 3 Dagen is in Amsterdam on the weekend of the 25th of May. I'm super excited to go, and I will be working for Wollen and Hey Mama Wolf, who are sharing a stall, and there will be amazing linen from Wollen and some fabrics and Mending, and there will be Hey Mama Wolf yarn, and yes, all over. It's gonna be so much fun. And I'm excited to knit this onwards and show you, hopefully before we go, I will record the second podcast of the month, which is actually on Patreon, but you might have known that. But the overall joy that this sweater brings me is immense. I love knitting it. So I'm going to show you little bits of close-ups, and I hope you enjoy, because these are my current projects. So have a look. 3 make along drive and ideas, I've also started dreaming a lot more about sewing. And this month is the month of May, so there's all this sort of me-made May content on Instagram, and Becky from Soprano Knits actually started the Less is More in May, or Less is More May hashtag as part of it, because she realized she really didn't want to get this whole vibe of wanting to, needing to, having this urge to spend money in connection to all the amazing makes you see, and the sort of catapult of, I made this, but I want what you made, and you know, the sort of topic of knitter's envy, which I have written about in the zine before, where it sort of propels, you sort of watch all these outfit posts and you sort of get this whole feeling of needing to make quicker, create more, and sometimes that urge leads to purchases of material and this kind of thought, which really struck a chord with me, because I have a lovely, amazing, happily treasured stash, and I do want to knit from it, and I do not want to have this kind of growing, intense urge to buy more. So I'm extra happy to join her hashtag or her prompts and to kind of join in the conversations, hoping to actually change something about how I knit and how I sew, because sewing wise I hardly do any. I have a huge pile of mending projects. I have a huge pile of fabrics that I've just randomly bought that might never be enough for a whole project. I don't know, because I'm like a bit in my baby sort of early stages sewing. So I thought I will introduce to you a mending project, a sort of upcycling project, and a sewing dream, just sort of quickly here at the end, to get my mending upcycling topic back up and running for the podcast, because it's so important to make use of the products, the materials we have. And also, after the sewing bit, I'm going to do the stash busting, which I introduced this year to my podcast, and I've been really enjoying that. Going back, looking at my stash and actually using up some of that, rather than doing this whole acquisitions, look at what I've bought thing. I'm basically introducing something from my stash and some kind of ideas, spin-offs, plans, or why the yarn's in the stash, that kind of story. So, sewing. I found my favorite skirt, which is ridiculous actually that I haven't mended it, but then it was winter, so it wasn't really time to wear this. I'm splashed out. When I was working a little bit more and earning a little bit more, I bought this skirt from Bobo Chooses, which is a really lovely Spanish kids brand, and they sort of branched out and did a whole line of women's clothes as well. And yeah, I bought the skirt twice, because the first time I bought it, relatively soon after, a hamster had a bite into it. She literally nibbled it to build her nest. So I still have fabric from one of these skirts, because I was so upset about it. I hardly ever buy myself anything new, especially not something that is so pricey. And yeah, I bought it again because I was so upset, and I was like, that's not gonna just be the end of me and this skirt. However, the second one seems to have worn out really quickly. I'll talk you through it. Basically, the button has torn a hole in the skirt, but you still have the sort of backing to it, but it's actually the two bottom buttons have torn holes into the top layer of the fabric, and I think that is because obviously down there maybe I should have left them open, or walking, and I do have quite a stride on me, I must have torn them, or bending down or whatnot. However, it wasn't a cheap skirt and it's kind of ridiculous. But it's happened. This is after, what, 1 summer, and I haven't mended it since, oh yeah, I haven't mended it. But I will mend it, and I will use bits of fabric to sort of, so I'm excited to fix the buttons, sort of where the buttons have torn little holes in this skirt, ready for summer. And I'm also excited to start some sewing. So I went through my fabric stash, and last year I was gifted this sort of orangey red, I would say it's a cotton. I've got some amazing linen from Wollen, which is really lovely. I got some fun prints like these teacups. Got another linen with these checkers. A green cotton fabric from India when I went travelling after my A-levels, and an old sort of poppy dress that was torn from the flea market, but I bought it for the fabric. So with all of these fabrics, I am planning, in the sort of spirit of less is more May, to make a sort of mock-up version of a dress that will ultimately hopefully be sewn from a linen that I'm gonna purchase at a later point. That's what I like about Less About May. It's not necessarily about not purchasing in May and then going all out in June. It's sort of about thinking about when to spend and when it makes sense to spend money. And for me, it will make sense to spend money on this incredible linen because I already own a linen dress and I absolutely love it, and I wear it all summer. And now I'm hoping and dreaming to knit a similar dress for myself again. And I'm going to use all these bits and bobs of fabric to make a mock-up version, which is sort of like a first trial to work out how to go through the process of making the dress in a sort of lesser quality, in my case, stash or end bits or gifted bits, recycled bits of fabric, as well as, you know, I might use this linen already for the top just so that it's as near as possible, or I might actually use this for a different sewing project. But these are all the fabrics that are currently from the stash speaking to me, saying, Mimi, use us! And I thought I will make like a little hodgepodge twirl inspired by a creative soul and maker called Hayley that I follow on Instagram, and whose makes really are amazingly upcycled dresses or tops or jackets, but I will not be able to afford. So I thought I will be inspired and use various different kinds of fabrics for a twirl version of a dress that will eventually this summer sew with linen. And that is the Hinterland dress, and I'm gonna try and make that as part of the Magic Mama makes and talk about it here and talk about it in our Ravelry group. In case anyone else wants to sew the Hinterland, you're very warmly invited to maybe join me, and hopefully I will be able to process this because I have a block with the sewing. I'm very scared of my sewing machine. Things go wrong regularly when I sit down at the sewing machine, so I'm hoping to break through by going with these sort of end bits, stashed yarns. What else do I want to use? Oh, I've shown the dress that I'm dreaming about as a sewing project, and I spoke about the mending of the skirt. However, I also want to upcycle some tops that I've had and change the surface. It involves mending as well, but it involves a lot of changing. I've got this jacket which I love from the flea market when I was pregnant with my second son, so I was wearing it quite a lot in that pregnancy. However, it is quite torn under the arms. I've got a massive hole under this arm and none under here, but it's already mended. And it was a hand sewn little jacket, and I want to play around with it a bit. So I'm going to take the sleeves off and maybe use the sleeves in the dress that I'm making as well, or I don't know, make a little sort of summery vest top that I've been dreaming about having. So wish me luck. I'm hoping to make this. So that is the sewing. And stash wise, I have had this bag of beautiful blues by Magazine Duet for a PP sweater designed by Rebecca Mauser for a long time. There was a mail issue. I was meant to test knit the sweater for her, but the mail rules in Germany changed and I wasn't handed the parcel at the time of the test knit. And when Petra, who owns or is the maker behind Magazine Duet, resent it, it was already too late. However, I had always planned to use this yarn and make the PP sweater as part of the Magic 3 Mile. And part of unearthing my stash and going through it and starting Magic 3 Mile right now obviously was like, wow, I ought to. It's about time. Because somehow some stash just cannot be reallocated and some patterns just want to be knitted. And it's such a shame to push it off. And especially because Rebecca is a lovely friend of mine. We go to the same knit circle at Wallen and I really love her designs in general. I love this design. I'm eyeing up one of her sock designs that she designed for John Arbin for some of the stash that I presented in my EYF acquisitions. So my stash busting will be knitting the PP sweater and I can't wait. I chose the shoulder color to be red. I'm gonna try and introduce some of the pictures from her feed or her Ravelry to show the sweater. It's actually a very classic design and I love the stripes. And yes, I'm very excited. I'm sorry for the crispy bag. Very excited to use up that stash and knit Rebecca Mauser's PP sweater in Magazine Duet blues, so I'm very excited. Also, I'm going through a huge backlog of my Taproot publication, the magazines for patterns and things. I'm super excited to delve in more and come up with more things because I do not only have a big stash of yarn and fabric and materials, I also have patterns and there I can really use some. So it's quite nice to take the time to reflect and come up with makes that I want to make. And as part of that, I want to draw one tarot card this time, which is all Magic 3 Mile, you know, sort of celebrating the ideas, and I want to draw a little set of cards to do for our Magic 3 Mile as an inspiration for anyone who wants to join. So wait around for that. Towards the end, you can see my tarot card reading, Magic 3 Mile unfolding, and I have filmed a little knit reportage. It's exciting. I went to the meet and greet with Stephen Westknits, Mr. Westknits himself at Yarn Over Berlin on Saturday, and it was amazing. He's such a lovely chap. I left very inspired. I saw lots of very happy knitters and obviously a crowd of huge fans of his. I was wearing my Pinglewin, so I was very pleased to, you know, have knitted one of his designs and just to sort of find out a lot of stuff. There was a delicious cake. And yeah, I filmed and took some photographs, so I felt like I needed to take you along, and I wish you could have all been there. You would have enjoyed it. It was a super fun event, and I'm extremely inspired. Like I think I'm only allowing myself to buy a couple of patterns on Ravelry this month because I'm making that part of the less is more May thing, and I generally buy quite a few patterns per month because I like supporting designers and I like new things and I get inspired and I just shop for patterns. I will definitely buy one of Stephen's patterns because I feel inspired, and there's another pattern which is to do with stash busting. Both patterns are like stash busting patterns that I'm dreaming to shop for, and I will talk about them in my next podcast because now I've mumbled for too long. I hope you enjoyed my podcast. This time it was a bit disjointed, and I hope I managed to join the gaps with a little bit of close-up filming. I am extra excited you stayed till the end. Thank you for listening, and thank you for sitting alongside me, knitting or making or dreaming of makes. It means the world. Thank you also for all my lovely Patreon supporters. The Zenith tier is the special tier that will receive the next podcast. There's like an interim secret podcast that happens in 2 weeks' time, so I'm very happy to update that to the page. All the best, my lovelies. Keep on knitting, keep the magic alive, and 3 is a magic number. See you soon. Bye.